Her hand shook as she held out her ID for the third time. The man behind the counter still wouldn't take it. Behind her, a mother pulled her toddler closer, like proximity to Vanessa's scars was something contagious. Nobody in that lobby said a word in her defense, not one person, in a room full of parents who claimed to believe in kindness. Then the door opened. Boots, leather, a patch that read Iron Ridge Riders. He didn't know her name. He didn't need to. What he said next made the receptionist's face go pale, and by the time he finished speaking, the entire room had gone completely silent, waiting to see what would happen when someone finally refused to look away. The morning fog still clung to the ridgelines above Asheville when Vanessa Whitfield parked her old Honda Civic across the street from Blue Ridge Elementary. She sat there for a moment longer than she needed to, watching other parents stream toward the entrance with paper cups of coffee and half-asleep toddlers on their hips. Her hands rested on the steering wheel, and out of habit, she angled the rearview mirror away from her face. It had been 3 years since the fire, 3 years since a faulty space heater in her sister's garage apartment had turned an ordinary Tuesday night into the worst hour of her life. She had gotten her daughter Emily out through the window first. The burns on the left side of her face and down her neck were the price she'd paid for those 90 extra seconds inside. Vanessa had made peace with a lot of things since then. She had not made peace with the way strangers looked at her, or the way conversation sometimes stopped when she walked into a room. But today wasn't about her. Today was career day, and Emily, now 8 years old, had begged her to come and talk about her job as a veterinary technician. Emily loved animals more than almost anything, and she'd been telling her classmates for 2 weeks that her mom fixed dogs and cats, a description that made Vanessa smile every time she heard it. She checked her badge, a laminated visitor pass the school had mailed to confirmed volunteers, clipped it to her blouse, and crossed the street. The front office of Blue Ridge Elementary smelled like pencil shavings and industrial floor cleaner, the same as every elementary school Vanessa had ever set foot in. A line of parents waited to sign in at the security desk, chatting easily with a woman Vanessa didn't recognize. The regular receptionist, Mrs. Doyle, who knew Vanessa by name and always asked about Emily's grades, was nowhere in sight. When it was Vanessa's turn, she smiled. The crooked smile that the burn scars allowed her, the one she had practiced in mirrors until she stopped hating it, and slid her ID and volunteer badge across the counter. "I'm here for career day, Emily Whitfield's class, Mrs. Palmer's room." The substitute receptionist, a heavy-set man with a name tag reading Mr. Gentry, glanced at the badge, then up at Vanessa's face. He didn't look away fast enough to hide his reaction. His mouth tightened. "I'll need to see a second form of identification," he said. Vanessa blinked. "I have my driver's license." She handed it over. He studied it far longer than necessary, flipping it over twice as though searching for something wrong with it. Behind her, a line was forming. She heard someone shift their weight, a stroller wheel squeak against the tile. "Ma'am, I'm going to need you to step aside," Mr. Gentry said. "We have new visitor protocols since the incident last spring, and I can't verify—" "Verify what?" Vanessa asked. Her voice stayed even, though her pulse had begun to climb. "I'm a registered volunteer. My daughter is in the 3rd grade here. I got the confirmation letter in the mail." "I understand you say that," he said, and something in the way he said "you say that" made heat crawl up Vanessa's throat. "But I don't have a record of you in the visitor system, and given your—" He hesitated, his eyes flicking again to the left side of her face. "Given the circumstances, I think it's better if you wait over there while I call the principal." A woman in line behind Vanessa, young, holding a toddler, pulled her child slightly closer as if by instinct. Vanessa felt the small motion like a slap. "I'm not a danger to anyone," Vanessa said quietly. "I'm a mother. That's all I am right now." A mother. "I never said you were dangerous," Mr. Gentry replied, though the defensiveness in his voice suggested he'd at least considered it. "I just need to follow the protocol." Vanessa stood at the counter, badge still in her hand, feeling 20 pairs of eyes on the ruined side of her face. She thought about all the years of physical therapy, the skin grafts, the nights she'd cried into a pillow so Emily wouldn't hear. She thought about how far she had come to simply stand in a school lobby without wanting to disappear. She was still standing there, badge extended, when the low, unmistakable rumble of a motorcycle engine cut through the morning outside, and then went quiet, right in front of the building. The man who walked through the door a moment later wore a black leather vest over a flannel shirt, sun-worn jeans, and boots that had clearly logged thousands of miles. Patches on his vest read Iron Ridge Riders, and beneath that, Veteran. He was tall, broad-shouldered, somewhere in his early 40s, with a close-cropped beard going grey at the edges, and the kind of weathered calm in his eyes that came from having seen worse mornings than this one. His name was Russell Carrigan, and he was there to pick up his nephew's forgotten lunch, a favour for his sister, nothing more. He had not expected to walk into the middle of anything. But he stopped just inside the door, taking in the scene. A woman standing rigid at the counter, a badge in her outstretched hand, a receptionist refusing to take it, and a room full of parents pretending very hard not to watch. Russell had grown up around here. He knew Blue Ridge Elementary. His own kids had gone through it a decade earlier. He didn't know Vanessa Whitfield. But he knew what it looked like when someone was being humiliated in public, because he'd spent 11 years overseas watching people get treated as less than human for reasons that had nothing to do with who they actually were. He walked straight to the counter and set his nephew's lunch bag down beside Vanessa's still extended hand. "Morning," he said to Mr. Gentry, his voice easy, almost friendly. "Everything okay up here?" "Sir, this doesn't concern you," Mr. Gentry said. "Might not," Russell agreed, "but I've got about 90 seconds before I need to get back on the road, and I'm curious what the holdup is." He glanced at Vanessa. "Ma'am, you a parent here?" "Yes," Vanessa said. "My daughter's in 3rd grade. I'm supposed to be doing career day in her classroom right now." Russell looked at her badge, then at the confirmation letter she'd pulled from her purse, the school's own letterhead printed clearly across the top. "That looks like everything you need," he said, then turned back to Mr. Gentry. "What's the actual problem?" Mr. Gentry's jaw tightened. "The problem, sir, is that I don't have her in the system, and I have a responsibility to the children in this building." "You said you didn't have a record of her," Russell said slowly. "Did you actually check the system, or did you decide before she finished handing you her ID?" The room had gone very quiet. Somewhere down the hallway, a bell rang for the start of first period, distant and oblivious. Mr. Gentry didn't answer. Vanessa felt something she hadn't felt in a long time in that lobby. Not embarrassment. Not the familiar urge to shrink and apologize for her own existence, but something closer to a held breath waiting to be released. She looked at the stranger in the leather vest, this man she had never met, standing beside her like it was the most natural thing in the world. "You don't have to do this," she said quietly to Russell. "I can wait for the principal." "You can," Russell agreed, "but you shouldn't have to." He turned back to Mr. Gentry. "Look, I'm not trying to make your morning harder. Pull up the visitor log. Check the volunteer confirmation list for career day. It'll take you 30 seconds, and then this lady can go read to her daughter's class like she's supposed to." "Mr." Gentry hesitated, glancing toward the hallway that led to the principal's office, as if hoping reinforcements would appear. None did. Reluctantly, he turned to his computer and began typing, his movements stiff with the particular resentment of a man who knows he's about to be proven wrong in public. While he searched, Russell pulled out his phone and, without making a show of it, sent a single text to a group thread. at Blue Ridge Elementary. A mum's getting hassled for no good reason. If any of you are close, wouldn't hurt to swing by. He didn't expect much. Most of the Iron Ridge riders were at work by 8:30 on a Tuesday, but the club had a rule that went back to its founding 15 years earlier, back when Russell's late father-in-law and a handful of other veterans had started it as a way to look out for each other after coming home from deployments that nobody back home understood. You don't leave a person standing alone if you can help it. It wasn't written down anywhere official. It didn't need to be. Within 4 minutes, Mr. Gentry found what he was looking for. Whitfield, he muttered, scrolling. Vanessa Whitfield, career day volunteer, Mrs. Palmer's class. He stared at the screen a moment too long, as if the entry itself had betrayed him. There it is, Russell said, not unkindly. I still need to verify. You already verified it, Russell said. It's right there on your screen. Mr. Gentry's face reddened. He printed a fresh visitor sticker and slid it across the counter without meeting Vanessa's eyes. Room 14, he said, down the hall on the left. Vanessa took the sticker with a hand that wasn't quite steady. Thank you, she said to Russell, not to Mr. Gentry. You don't need to thank me, Russell said. You needed a receipt for something that was already true. That's all I did. He was turning to leave, his nephew's lunch still in hand, his actual errand not yet finished, when the front door opened again. A woman in her late 30s walked in wearing a matching vest, her dark hair pulled back under a bandana, a paint-flecked hoodie underneath. Her name was Karen Ellison, a long-time member of Iron Ridge Riders and a contractor by trade. She'd been 3 blocks away, dropping off supplies at a job site, when Russell's text came through. Heard there was a situation, Karen said, scanning the room. 2 more parents near the door had pulled out their phones, not to film anything dramatic. Nothing dramatic had happened yet, but because word had already begun to spread in the particular way it does in small communities, one text at a time. Situations handled, Russell said. Vanessa here got where she was going. He gestured toward her, and Karen's eyes moved to Vanessa's face. The scars, the visitor badge, the strain still visible around her eyes. And something in Karen's expression softened with immediate understanding, though she said nothing about it directly. Good, Karen said simply. You need anything, you let us know. We're around. It was such a small thing to say, but Vanessa felt it land somewhere deep, a place that had been guarded and locked for 3 years. Strangers did not offer to look out for her. Strangers looked away or stared too long or made the too careful kind of small talk that was its own form of flinching. Vanessa made her way to Mrs. Palmer's classroom, her visitor badge crooked on her blouse, her heart still beating too fast. When she opened the door, 23 third graders turned to look at her, and for one terrible second the old fear rose up. The fear of small faces registering shock, of a child somewhere starting to cry, of the whispers that sometimes followed her into rooms. Instead, Emily's face broke into the widest smile Vanessa had ever seen. "That's my mum!" Emily announced to the room, standing halfway out of her chair, practically vibrating with pride. "She fixes dogs and cats. She saved a puppy last week that got hit by a car." The children erupted into questions before Vanessa had even set down her bag. "Does it hurt when you give shots? Have you ever met a lion? What's the grossest thing you've ever seen?" Mrs. Palmer, a kind-eyed woman in her 50s, guided Vanessa to the front of the room with an easy warmth that suggested she'd heard nothing about the trouble at the front desk, or if she had decided it wasn't going to touch this classroom. For the next 30 minutes, Vanessa forgot about Mr. Gentry entirely. She talked about setting broken legs on golden retrievers and cleaning cat teeth, and the time she'd bottle-fed an orphaned kitten every 2 hours for 3 straight weeks. She answered questions about blood and bandages, and what it felt like when an animal was scared. Emily sat in the front row, glowing, occasionally adding details her mother had left out. Tell them about the turtle, Mom. Tell them about the turtle. And for half an hour, Vanessa Whitfield was not a woman with scars. She was just Emily's mom, the one who fixed dogs and cats, the one all the other kids wanted to talk to at recess. But outside, in the parking lot, word of what had happened at the front desk had already begun to travel further than Vanessa knew. By the time career day ended and Vanessa walked back out through the front lobby, 3 more motorcycles were parked along the curb outside Blue Ridge Elementary, engines off, riders standing in a loose, unhurried cluster near the flagpole. She recognized Russell immediately, and beside him, Karen. The other 2 she didn't know. A lean man in his 50s, with reading glasses pushed up into grey hair, and a younger woman with a prosthetic running blade tattooed along her forearm, both wearing the same Iron Ridge Riders patches. Vanessa's first instinct was worry. Groups of parents were beginning to gather near the pickup line, and she didn't want anyone thinking the bikers were there to cause a scene, didn't want to be the reason for more stares, more whispers. But nobody seemed alarmed. If anything, several parents nodded at the riders as they passed, a few even stopping to chat. It became clear, in pieces, that the Iron Ridge Riders were not strangers to this community. They ran a toy drive every December. They'd rebuilt a wheelchair ramp for a disabled veteran 2 streets over the previous spring. Half the older kids in the pickup line knew them by name because they'd shown up to the school's fall festival 2 years running, letting children sit on their bikes for photos, raising money for the library's new roof. "You didn't have to come back," Vanessa said to Russell as she approached. "Wasn't really planned," Russell admitted, "but my sister mentioned what happened, and some of the others wanted to make sure you got out of here all right. That's it. Nothing dramatic." "It felt dramatic in there," Vanessa said, quieter now. The adrenaline of the morning starting to drain into something heavier. Exhaustion mostly, and the particular fatigue of having been made to prove herself in front of strangers, again, for the 1,000th time in 3 years. Karen stepped closer. "For what it's worth," she said, "that man at the desk was in the wrong. Everybody in that lobby saw it. You didn't do anything except try to walk into your daughter's school." "I know that," Vanessa said. "I just don't always feel it." It was an honest thing to admit, more honest than she'd meant to be with people she'd known for less than 2 hours. But something about Karen's directness and the quiet solidity of Russell standing beside her made honesty feel less dangerous than it usually did. "You should talk to Principal Alvarez before you leave," said the woman with the prosthetic blade. Her name was Brittany Soule, a physical therapist who'd lost part of her leg in a training accident years before joining the club. "Not to get anybody fired, just so there's a record, so the next parent who walks in here doesn't go through what you went through." Vanessa hadn't considered that. She'd been so focused on getting through the morning, on protecting Emily from any fallout, that she hadn't thought about the next mother, the next father, the next person who might not have a stranger in a leather vest willing to stand beside them at the counter. Principal Alvarez, a composed woman in her early 50s who had run Blue Ridge Elementary for 9 years, listened to Vanessa's account without interrupting. Russell and Karen waited outside the office, giving Vanessa the space to speak for herself, though both had made it clear they'd corroborate anything she said if asked. "I want to be very clear," Principal Alvarez said when Vanessa finished. "There is no protocol at this school that treats a parent differently because of a physical difference. I don't know what Mr. Gentry believed he was following, but it wasn't district policy, and it isn't something I'll allow to happen again." She paused, folding her hands on the desk. "I'm sorry this happened to you, Mrs. Whitfield. I'm sorry it happened in a building where your daughter is supposed to feel safe and where you should feel welcome." "Thank you," Vanessa said, and found that she meant it. "I'll be speaking with him this afternoon," the principal continued, "and I'll be reviewing our substitute training. This shouldn't have happened, and the fact that it took several other parents stepping in for it to be corrected tells me we have work to do." Outside, a small crowd had gathered near the flagpole. Not a protest, nothing so dramatic, just parents and a few teachers who'd heard fragments of the morning's events and wanted to know Vanessa was all right. A woman named Diane Voss, whose son sat 2 seats from Emily in Mrs. Palmer's class, approached Vanessa with an expression of open embarrassment. "I was in that line," Diane admitted. "I didn't say anything. I should have." "You don't owe me an apology," Vanessa said, though the acknowledgement mattered more than she expected it to. "Maybe not," Diane said, "but I'm still sorry I didn't." By the time Vanessa finally walked to her car, the sun had burned off the last of the morning fog, and Asheville's ridgelines stood out sharp and green against a pale October sky. Russell and Karen were still by the flagpole, in no particular hurry, as though standing there a while longer was simply the natural thing to do. "You riding with anybody today, or just yourself?" Russell asked as Vanessa passed. "Just myself," she said. "Same as most days." Something in the way she said it, not bitter, just tired, the fatigue of a woman who had learned to expect to be alone in most rooms, made Russell glance at Karen, a silent exchange passing between them. "Well," Russell said, "you're not just yourself today. You're one of ours now, whether you asked for it or not." Vanessa didn't know what to say to that. She got into her car, and in the rearview mirror she watched the 4 motorcycles pull away from the curb, engines rising in a low chorus that carried down the street long after they'd turned the corner. What Vanessa didn't know, what none of them fully understood until 3 days later, was that one of the parents, standing in line that morning, a father named Todd Pemberton, who rarely used his phone for anything more than his daughter's soccer schedule, had recorded the last 90 seconds of the confrontation at the front desk. He hadn't meant to post it anywhere. He'd filmed it out of a vague, uneasy instinct that something worth remembering was happening, then forgotten about it entirely, until his wife found the clip while scrolling through his camera roll for photos of their daughter's school play. She uploaded it to a local Asheville community page with a simple caption: "This happened at my daughter's school on Tuesday. A mum was denied entry because of burn scars on her face. A man on a motorcycle stood up for her, and it should never have had to come to that." By Friday morning, the video had been viewed over 200,000 times. Vanessa found out about it from her sister, who called in a near panic, certain Vanessa would be furious. Instead, Vanessa sat at her kitchen table, coffee going cold beside her laptop, and watched the 90-second clip with a strange, disconnected feeling, as if she were watching a stranger, not herself, standing at that counter with her ID extended. The comments beneath the video were a mixture of things she'd expected and things she hadn't. There was cruelty, as there always was somewhere in the depths of the internet, a handful of anonymous comments about her appearance that she made herself stop reading after the 3rd one. But there was also an outpouring she hadn't anticipated. Burn survivors from across the country sharing their own stories of being stared at, questioned, denied service, made to feel like their injuries were something to apologize for. Parents thanking Todd Pemberton for capturing the moment and thanking the unnamed biker whose face was barely visible in the low-quality footage. Local news picked up the story by Saturday. A reporter from the Asheville affiliate reached out to the school district, which issued a statement confirming that a review of visitor protocols is underway, and that all staff will undergo updated sensitivity training. Mr. Gentry, it turned out, had been a substitute hired through an outside agency and would not be returning to any position within the district. Not fired outright, but quietly not rehired, which amounted to the same thing. Russell hadn't wanted any part of the attention. When a local reporter tracked him down through the Iron Ridge Riders community Facebook page, he gave a short, uncomfortable statement. "I just did what anybody should have done. Nobody deserves to be treated like that in front of their own kid," and declined to say much more, but the attention found Vanessa regardless, and it found Emily too. At school on Monday, Emily came home with a story of her own. A boy in her class, one she'd never spoken much to before, had come up to her at recess and told her he'd seen the video, and that his mom had cried watching it, and that he thought Emily's mom was like a superhero, but real. Emily had beamed the whole walk home recounting it, oblivious to the weight the story carried for her mother, seeing in it only pure, uncomplicated pride. "Is it bad that people are watching it?" Emily asked that night, brushing her teeth, catching her mother's reflection in the bathroom mirror. "The video, I mean. Are you mad?" Vanessa considered the question longer than an 8-year-old's bedtime conversation usually warranted. "I don't think I'm mad," she said finally. "I think I spent a long time trying to be invisible, baby, and I guess I'm still figuring out how I feel about not being invisible anymore." "I don't want you to be invisible," Emily said, matter of fact in the way only children can manage. "I like seeing you." It was such a simple sentence, and it undid something in Vanessa that 3 years of quiet effort had never quite managed to touch. She sat on the edge of the bathtub while Emily finished brushing her teeth and let herself cry. Not from sadness, exactly, but from the strange relief of being seen and surviving it. The following weekend, the Iron Ridge Riders held their annual fall charity ride, an event that raised money for the regional burn treatment center 2 counties over. A coincidence Russell hadn't planned, but didn't ignore either, once he learned the ride's usual beneficiary, aligned so directly with what had happened at Blue Ridge Elementary. He called Vanessa personally to invite her, not as a guest of honor, not to be paraded in front of anyone, but simply as someone who might want to be there. "You don't have to ride anything," he said. "You don't have to speak. If you just want to stand at the finish line and watch, that's enough. But I thought you should know it's happening and that you and Emily would be welcome." Vanessa hesitated only a moment before saying yes. The morning of the charity ride was crisp and clear, the kind of late October day that made the Blue Ridge Mountains look as though someone had painted them in deliberate, careful strokes of orange and red. Vanessa arrived at the staging area, a gravel lot behind a Baptist church on the edge of town, donated for the occasion. With Emily's hand in hers, both of them wearing matching Iron Ridge Riders t-shirts that Karen had dropped off at their apartment 2 days earlier, a small, unassuming gesture that had meant more to Vanessa than she knew how to express. Nearly 60 motorcycles filled the lot, their riders moving between them in a relaxed, easy rhythm, checking mirrors, adjusting saddlebags, calling out to one another across the gravel. Vanessa recognized Russell near the front, going over a route map with Brittany, and Karen crouched beside her bike, tightening a strap on a cooler of water bottles destined for the rest stops along the route. "You made it," Russell said when he spotted her, a genuine warmth in his voice that still caught Vanessa slightly off guard, even now. "We made it," Vanessa confirmed, and Emily, emboldened by the sight of so many motorcycles in one place, immediately peppered Russell with questions about engine sizes and top speeds that he answered with the patient seriousness of a man who clearly enjoyed being asked. Before the ride began, Russell gathered the group near the front of the lot, as was tradition before any charity run. He kept his remarks short. He wasn't a man who enjoyed speeches, but he made a point of acknowledging why this particular ride mattered a little differently this year. "Most of you know by now what happened a few weeks back at Blue Ridge Elementary," he said, his voice carrying easily across the quiet lot. "A mother got treated like she didn't belong somewhere she had every right to be. That's not new. It happens more than most of us want to admit to people who look different, who've been through things the rest of us can't imagine. What matters is what we do when we see it happening in front of us." He paused, glancing toward Vanessa, who stood near the back of the crowd, with Emily pressed against her side. "Today's ride raises money for people rebuilding their lives after burns, after fires, after the kind of thing that changes everything in a single afternoon. Vanessa Whitfield and her daughter are here with us today, and I want to say, on behalf of everybody in this club, you're not a guest, you're one of ours. A quiet round of applause moved through the crowd, unforced and sincere, the kind that didn't ask Vanessa to perform gratitude or explain her scars or make anyone else comfortable with her presence. It simply acknowledged her and moved on. Vanessa felt Emily's hand tighten around hers. "Mom," Emily whispered, "everybody's clapping for you." "I know, baby," Vanessa said, her voice unsteady. "I know." The ride itself took the group along winding mountain roads outside Asheville, 60 motorcycles moving together in a long, thunderous procession past farmland and orchards, heavy with the last of the season's apples. Vanessa and Emily followed behind in a support van driven by Diane Voss, who had asked to help out after the events at the school and had quickly become something like a friend in the weeks since. From the van's window, Vanessa watched the riders ahead of her. Russell at the front, Karen and Brittany flanking the group, dozens of strangers who had become something else entirely in the space of a few weeks, and felt something settle in her chest that she hadn't felt in a very long time. It wasn't that the world had stopped staring. She knew it hadn't. There would be other lobbies, other counters, other Mr. Gentrys who looked at her face and made assumptions before she'd said a single word. That reality hadn't disappeared, and Vanessa had stopped expecting it to. But she understood something now that she hadn't understood 3 weeks earlier. Standing at that counter with her badge extended and her hands shaking, she was not alone in it. She never really had been. Not since the day Russell Carrigan had walked through that door for a forgotten lunch bag and stayed for something much larger. By the time the ride ended back at the church parking lot, the charity total for the day had climbed past $11,000, money that would go directly to the Regional Burn Center's rehabilitation program. Physical therapy sessions, scar treatment, counseling services for families navigating the same long, difficult road Vanessa had walked for the past 3 years. Principal Alvarez, who had heard about the ride through the school's parent network, showed up unannounced near the end of the event, offering a handshake to Russell and a quiet, private apology to Vanessa that Vanessa hadn't expected but appreciated all the same. "We've changed our visitor protocol," the principal said, "effective this week. No substitute staff will be permitted to deny entry to a confirmed volunteer without immediate supervisor verification. It's a small thing. But it's something. It's not small," Vanessa said. "It matters." That evening, driving home with Emily asleep against the window, the mountains fading into deep blue silhouette against the last light of the day, Vanessa's phone buzzed with a text from Russell. "Good day. See you at the next one?" Vanessa smiled, the same crooked, hard-won smile she had spent 3 years learning not to hide, and typed back a single word: always. She glanced once more at her daughter, asleep and unbothered, safe in the knowledge that her mother had shown up, had been seen, and had not been alone. Somewhere behind them, faint against the darkening road, the last of the motorcycles were still making their way home, engines humming low and steady beneath a sky full of early stars.